So it took a while, but I finally got it. This is the Apple Vision Pro here in studio. They didn't launch this thing in Canada, so it was a little bit tougher to get our hands on it. And obviously, as you're aware, we're talking about a fairly expensive device, and then trying to import it and stuff, you spend a few more bucks. I'm conflicted about this device in general. I mean, before even trying it, just the concept of it. I do want to kick it off with the hardware itself, though, before getting into sort of the bigger picture about what this all means. The future of humanity inside of headsets eventually could be an issue for some of us or all of us. Anyways, we're definitely not there yet, so it's not a massive concern at the moment. But this certainly does seem like an indication of the future, and you don't have to play with it for very long in order to see why and how that will probably be the case. But first, let's talk about the hardware, because there are other companies making headsets, and we will be inside of headsets at some point in the future for some period of time throughout the day. Apple is not the first to the party, and that's not unusual for them. Apple has historically waited before entering a particular segment. Devices like the Quest, which this one's now in its third generation. So obviously there's been some learning that's happened there. There's a very specific and seemingly different approach that Meta has taken to the headset, with the emphasis on gaming with that Oculus origin. Apple, on the other hand, it's harder to pinpoint who their target is and what they hope for this thing to do best. The hardware. Unique to this space, you can't even pinpoint your typical plastic. Like this plastic that mainly makes up the Quest, you can't find it on here. You have this soft touch material on these arms that support the back strap and also the speakers. But after that, you are talking about fabrics and metal and glass and a seemingly organic type of design. It feels and looks futuristic. They include another headband, which is a little bit more traditional. It's going to take some of the weight and put it on the top of your head, which allows you to have the headset less tight to your face. Could be more comfortable for some. This unit has these wires that travel through it, and this knob allows you to quickly tighten it and loosen it. This to me is more interesting. The comfort is okay for my face and head shape, but that's a limited usage. I've used it mostly here in the studio, seated, a little bit of work, on the couch, watching movies and things like that. And maybe if you're trying to do more activity with this, you might want the added security of the head strap. Now, the way that these straps attach and detach is right here with these orange tabs. And I don't mind the way that connection takes place. You hear the sound to know that it's clipped properly, and it's sort of guided into place. It's an easy target. However, speaking of connection points, this section around the eyes is a little bit more precarious. I like the fact that it's easy to remove your different elements for cleaning. You got to start thinking about hygiene with these things living so close to your face and head. However, this is a section that you commonly grab to pick up other headsets. And as you can see here, you would not want to do that with this headset here. If I grip there was a moment where you almost dropped it on the ground because you just instinctively picked it up where the eye cushion was. And it's not just this piece. There's a bit stronger magnet on the shield here, but it's all magnets. So I like the fact that it's magnets and easy removal for cleaning, but then you have to be aware of how you pick it up versus on a traditional headset, something like this. It comes off, but it's a little bit harder to get it off. You can easily pick it up from that location. They also include this fabric textured cover for the exterior in order to both protect for travel. Another point on the hardware, it does come with two different face cushions. This one's called W+, and this one just W. Obviously, the Plus is giving you more cushion, which therefore gives you a slightly better seal from your environment, a darker experience when you want to have the lights turned down inside. And then as far as blocking the real world or shifting from augmented into virtual, this little dial here will help you control that. That's a familiar dial because Apple has utilized things like this on other devices, including the Apple Watch. So that will give you some comfort if you're already used to Apple devices. It'll also control your volume, which, speaking of volume, that brings me to the sound will absolutely surprise you. Of course, these are not headphones. They're not sitting in your ear or over your ear. They're just near your ear. But when you include Apple's spatial technology, you get an incredibly immersive experience. But there is one problem with that. There's a lot of sound bleed, so much so that Will was like, hey man, turn it down, which would obviously be a problem in any kind of quiet environment, including an airplane. You can use your AirPods, or you can use wireless headphones and then not have to worry about that. But if you want those spatial functions, then you're gonna need to be using some AirPods. But as it stands, not having anything in your ears, I promise you will be surprised by the sound performance of these little speakers. The other thing you're going to be impressed by is just the visual performance in general. As soon as you open up a movie or look at one of the scenic areas, or just, even just look at the text, there is tons of resolution to work with. It's the best looking headset that I've put on from that perspective. This for me is kind of like headphones for your eyes. And here's what I mean by that. The vast majority of things that I feel like I can do or want to do inside of this headset are consumption-based. Watching things, you'll be amazed. Even though there's no YouTube app, the YouTube Safari interface on Shorts, you can easily just roll the dice and slot machine your content as you consume it. But when you open up Apple TV Plus and you open up a movie and you scale that display and you either superimpose it in augmented reality form, or you head out into the desert in one of those scenic scenarios, you have a beautiful experience. You have an experience that you really can't have without having a large-scale display, and your premises may not allow for that. And certainly if you're sitting on an airplane, that also wouldn't be an option. So what headphones have done for audio privacy, the potential exists for the headset to do for video privacy, for content consumption and enjoyment. Now, the Quest takes it a step further, and so many other headsets, in putting a focus on gaming. And I'm not really sure what Apple's play is on that. I told Will when I first started experimenting with the headset, hey, Apple should have done some sort of tech demo in order to highlight some of the hardware functionality and features, and basically allow for you to learn the UI in a fun way, and also showcase to developers different ideas for how this hardware is complete overkill. The processor in here is way faster than it needs to be at the moment, although it does need to push all those pixels. Now, the closest thing that they have is this immersive memory thing, where if you shoot spatial video, then you can experience those memories again in such a way that you feel like you're inside of them. You can kind of look around with them. It got me to thinking that there's some futuristic content opportunities for developers and filmmakers and studios to be able to tap into that three-dimensionality to put us in similar places inside of films. But it is true, it's extremely immersive. Now, that immersion, depending on how you look at it, could be a little bit creepy. Some people get scared thinking about their memories in such a vivid and real kind of way. But that's the demonstration that's in the headset right now that feels the most futuristic to me. Now, let's talk a little bit about this battery pack and all the brains that are housed over here. It's connected via this cable, proprietary cable, which is kind of looks like a larger lightning connector. In order to extract it, you need to use a SIM tool, and then out of there comes this braided connection. Now, I was hoping this was some sort of a magnet, but it's more serious than that. This one clicks in and twists like so, providing power to the headset. Now, one of my gripes, this thing charges, or how it lets you know whether it's charging or not. Will and I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence. We came in the other morning and it was 0% battery. I'm not sure. I went on Reddit and saw a few other people were having some issues with things charging. It could be growing pains. Some people have to extract the cable, reinsert it, wiggle it, push it. I don't know. It might not be anything wrong. It might just be the way that this is relaying information. The other thing is you don't have a clear representation of overall battery life. You have to jump into the headset at which point you then have to toggle a menu looking at the battery life and whether or not it's charging in there. It's just a little bit like if this thing had a display on it, just showed you how much battery there was. And even if it was a meter, that would be kind of cool. Now, if you're wondering about battery life, and it's kind of a funny one because you've got this external battery. The headset's pretty heavy, but then you're powering such incredible hardware. You've got these high resolution displays, so you're pushing all those pixels. You're gonna get between maybe 2.5 hours of battery life on here. One nice thing, because you've got this USB-C connection point now, you can go ahead and throw a power brick into here and stay completely mobile while recharging the internal battery in here. So I'm just checking out this little battery unit here. It seems to state 3166 milliamp hours. Now the nice thing is that Apple gave you USB-C. So if you're not happy with the battery life that you're getting on the unit, you can reach for an external power bank like one from our partners over at Anker and extend your battery life. And they just came out with a bunch of new products. This is the new MagGo wireless charging station, which will actually charge all of your Apple devices, including having USB output. That's how big it is. Look at this little thing. So we're charging Apple Watch, AirPods, and then iPhone all at once. But just keep in mind, this one does not include a power bank. So the MagGo wireless charging 3-in-1 is comparable to an iPhone 15 Plus in weight and as compact as an Apple Magic Mouse. And we've got this power bank. It's the 10K MagGo power bank. It is fully compatible with Apple's original MagSafe, and it's as fast as Apple's own MagSafe charger. This one also adds a kickstand. Look how clean that is. You've got your 10,000 milliamp hour battery powering your battery that powers your Vision Pro. So you're extending your battery life significantly in your bag or pocket. 25% remaining, super flexible and useful. And then we've also got a 6.6K version, 15-watt charging. So this one kind of does a little bit of both things. You can see it props up like this. I can dock my phone in this fashion or use it in that fashion. It adjusts from 30 degrees to 65 degrees. So it allows you to put your iPhone in a more comfortable viewing angle. Now this actually features 15-watt wireless charging, which is faster than some of the other comparable devices on the market. So thanks again to Anker for sponsoring this episode. And let me know down in the comments which of these 3 devices is most compelling to you. To charge everything in one brick, power bank with the display on it, or this folding kickstand style power bank, 6.6K, 10K of power, and this one is the only one that's capable of charging 3 devices at once. Now, the other thing I should mention is how do we interact? We have things like these little controllers for Quest, and that's one of the things that enables console-like gaming inside of the headset and pinpoint accuracy, the hand and the eyes. And by the way, the eye tracking is fantastic. The hand from a precision tool perspective isn't always the best. Depends on what you're doing. Precision requires, in some cases, a finer tip or a finer pointer than what your hand is capable of, or maybe even your eyes for that matter. And at the moment, the majority of how you're navigating this thing is via your eyes. And what is some actually pretty great eye tracking that's in there. It makes sense for the general type of consumption, moving around a nice, beautiful menu, pinching and pulling in order to change the scale of something. For those types of tasks, it's perfect. But as soon as you jump into some productivity, which you can do with this headset, I've got a MacBook Pro over here. And when I put this headset on, and they're on the same network, they recognize the proximity. The headset asks if I want to see what's on the laptop, if I want to use the laptop within the headset. And the image pops up and it's sharp and it's beautiful. But then, again, interacting with it, you feel like something is missing. You're back to your hands being kind of the exclusive instruments until you reach down and interact with the keyboard. But the problem with looking at the keyboard is the same problem with looking at other objects that are close proximity inside of the headset. They don't look that good. This sort of augmented reality experience looks best kind of at arm's length. And as things get closer to here, they become much more difficult to focus on. So yes, you can work inside the headset. You're still manipulating an external instrument, which is your keyboard. And then you're kind of having this real life, augmented, mixed experience. It's doable. It is not my favorite thing to do, and I immediately want to take the headset off and just work on my laptop, even though I've got this way bigger display. Can I imagine a future in which this is seamless and this is comfortable? Absolutely. But these are the limitations at the moment. When people took a look at this device and saw the price tag, I think they assumed there would be a productivity component. Because if you take that productivity piece out, and what you're left with is a consumption device, who is looking to spend $3,500 for a consumption device? And we'll just add it in, a singular consumption device. Whereas if you get a big display for your living room, you can enjoy that with other people, sporting events and things like this. Every single person that wants to enjoy this experience has to have their very own $3,500 headset. And if you do choose to share it, well, you're not using it at the same time that you're sharing it, obviously. Now, I don't think this thing will always be $3,500. In fact, I look at that price tag and I assume that Apple was exclusively targeting early adopters, trying to iron out the kinks, not necessarily interested in making a mass market product with Generation 1, but instead maybe going on a fact-finding mission, using enthusiasts as the guinea pigs to figure out what they actually should be doing inside of this segment. I look at the Quest and think to myself, for the majority of people, this is so much more useful right now, in the sense that you can boot it up, spend way less money, and start playing some pretty immersive games immediately and still watching content and doing all that kind of stuff. Now, Apple does have an integration advantage in the fact that they have so much other hardware, and you're inside of their ecosystem already, and you've got your FaceTime and your messages and so forth. And that's exclusive, of course, to their hardware at the moment when it comes to headsets. When you do need to input some text to potentially respond to a message or to try to be productive, you will get an on-screen keyboard, and then your gestures change. And as long as you find the right proximity, you can type on it like a floating keyboard. Another experience that I'm not particularly fond of, but I'm a person who just finished building a mechanical keyboard for my home setup because I like the tactile feel of it, and I find that to be a pleasing experience, and I find the experience of slamming my fingertips into air to be not that enjoyable. Does that mean it's not the future? Absolutely not, because just like people said when we had smartphones and the iPhone came out and it was a capacitive touchscreen and people tried to hang on to their Blackberries for as long as they could, saying tactile was the only way. Obviously they were wrong about that. And people adjusted, and people will adjust to this. I don't know why, but I just had it in my head that Apple was closer than this. Even though Meta's been over there working on multiple generations, we're still at the ground level of where this thing can and will eventually go. So installing the headset, you can see the way it fits on the back there. It's kind of cool. Like, it spreads out around the back of your head, as you can see there. Immediately, we're greeted by a passcode. And my eyes are going to navigate. If my eyes highlight a particular button, I can tap, highlight a different button, and unlock the device. Okay, so now we're going to get a recording here of what the UI looks like. I'll hit the home button. You can see your app layout here. I can pinch and move and swipe between my apps. I can open something like Freeform. Here, for example, is a drawing app. You can see the tracking. It's pretty intuitive. And then in order to navigate, on the bottom of the frame, we have this bar we can grab and move app or the display wherever we like. And then beside there is an X if I want to close it out. Now, if I grab the corner, I can scale whichever scale I like. So I can set up multiple apps, multiple windows. And then you start to understand why you've got so much horsepower in here. If at some point this variety of apps exists that you're going to be running simultaneously, you're going to need some decent computing power in order to run all that. The web browser, as I suggested, kind of not the ideal experience at the moment. You're using eye tracking on a web page, which has all kinds of tiny little selection points, potential selection points. The highlight, the contrast against white is not that great. Being able to tell that I'm like highlighting this thumb, and you can see it's so tiny, like maintaining your selection through your click, it's really not the best experience at the moment. The pinch and scroll is extremely responsive. And the other cool thing is how it sort of keystones itself to a variety of surfaces. So as I go up towards the ceiling, it starts to create that angle. And if I want to push it back to a wall or pull it in close to my face like this, the thing you realize is the limitations of the field of view. So if I bring it in this tight where I can really appreciate the resolution, without making the screen basically iPad size. Otherwise, my field of view I just can't really take in the information that's on the sides of my vision at a very close point of reference. If I push the screen out further, the text, the fonts and things don't have the same level of sharpness as they do when they're up close. So, maybe when it comes to productivity, I just haven't found the perfect setup yet. It could be possible. The nature of the headset, work environments, collaborative environments, I think for the time being, there are still some pretty huge advantages having your eyes available and being sort of conducive to communication, depending on the type of environment that you work in. And then it's also just the fatigue of wearing a headset for an extended period of time. Like even me right there, I'm starting on the forehead, get the red mark there. You start to feel that weight on there. It's a really weird product to evaluate because it is a thing that Apple is selling right now for $3,500. And as we know, when Apple launches something, it's about to go mainstream. That's sort of how it has been. But I just feel that the headset proposition at the moment, the way that people are using it, the software availability and so forth, outside the realm of the technology that's built into it, it's mostly being used for consumption. And the value that people put on that is really unique to those individuals. There are enthusiasts in different categories, like say headphones, for example, that will spend a boatload of money on a very particular experience. And yes, you will have a tremendously immersive movie watching experience on the Vision Pro sitting on an airplane. I don't know what can even compete with it at the moment. But Apple launching this device at $3,500 implies something different to me, that is not how they view the device, and that they really do want it to become or be received as a tool that's capable of so much more. But that's going to take time. And I don't know if you want to spend your $3,500 today as you wait for that to come, or if you want to wait for Generation 2, and if you want a movie watching device that you can wear on an airplane, then there are other options that aren't going to be nearly as expensive. But it's Apple, and there are Apple enthusiasts. There's people that want to be on the forefront. They just want to try the latest hardware regardless. And of course, we've got all these memes of people using this thing on the subway and making it look like they're doing incredibly productive things, when in reality, for me at the moment, that is not the strength of these style of devices and interfaces. Now on to the topic of what this all means for the future. Apple is not exclusively guilty for sticking people into headsets because they launched the Vision Pro. The headset thing has been ongoing, and it will continue to go. When Facebook invested in Oculus and eventually became Meta, they were making a big bet on the fact that people were going to spend some time inside of headsets. Humans continued to select towards convenience and continue to want to have new and exciting experiences without moving a muscle. The thing will happen, and the experiences will get so good that it'll be impossible to ignore. And we're going to have to continue to make efforts to exercise personal agency over our discipline around devices like this, because the potential for persuasion is so great. Who are you granting the opportunity to manipulate your feelings and behavior while you're strapped into a sensory overload? It'll all be very interesting to watch. I know there have been some articles of people returning these things for whatever reason. We can speculate. Maybe their expectation around value proposition was not met. Maybe they started to panic about their futuristic life inside of a headset. Maybe the thing was too heavy as it sat on their nose and they didn't have the energy to adopt it. One thing I said to Will when we were talking about this product as a substitute for all the other displays and screens and devices that we already have in our lives, I thought about Tesla and how when Tesla tried to push the world towards an electric vehicle, they didn't just come with a commuter car. They had to come with something that got people excited. They had to come with something that could compete in a straight line. They had to put out these performance models that prior to that weren't associated or affiliated with electric vehicles. I mean, they had the Roadster first, but then in the Model S, and then eventually the Plaid. Why did the thing have to be 0 to 60 in 2 seconds? When something is better in this variety of categories, and it's a new thing that you have to adopt, which requires a completely new behavior, like remembering to charge your car or planning out your trek when you're about to go on your road trip, these are annoying things to have to adjust to as a human who's embedded inside of their habits. The mandate for them is to provide an experience that's so obviously better and measurably better that people put down their old tech and are willing to learn a new habit. And I don't think that's the case right now. I would still rather watch a movie on a big, beautiful display with a beautiful sound system. And I certainly would still rather get work done on the variety of devices that I have that can do that. This is a difficult thing to recommend. You have to give Apple credit for essentially looking at all the existing materials and finishes on modern headsets and saying, we'll use none of those, but this has a battery in it. Like, some of these materials are just light and they work. I don't know what it is for me, but there is something about the visual of the headset, the intentional blocking of your human sensory. There's something symbolic about that. But there's something about when Apple does it that you start to imagine the world doing it. I mean, they've just had that kind of impact on the tech segment. Not just that people will begin to adopt it because they're so comfortable and have so much enthusiasm around that brand, but also that other brands themselves will race to get into the segment so they're not left behind, because Apple has always sort of been that arbiter in that regard. It's really when it shrinks. When you have this in something the size of those Ray-Bans, what do you mean you don't have your assistant on your face? Obviously, you're wearing your assistant today because you're useless without your assistant. I'm curious what you guys think. Yeah, this has been out for a little while now. We've had some time to digest. Are you actually considering buying this? What price would this need to be for you to consider buying it? What is the optimal price for a headset, or any consumption device for that matter? Well, for you or for the masses? Or do they do a two-tiered system? Like, this is the Vision Pro. Is the Vision next set up for widespread adoption and therefore a little bit more figured out, ready for prime time than those of us that are crazy like myself are buying these Pro models? Have you guys bought the Vision Pro? Will you buy the Vision Pro? If the Vision Pro was available in your market, would you have already bought it? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. This is a unique moment in human history, the launch of this particular device. That is arguably the biggest tech company in the world, taking their first crack at maybe the future of all gadgets, the headset, which eventually will probably just be glasses or implants or contact lenses, or maybe just robots. Maybe we're just the brain in the jar with the electrodes. Like, why do we need all this? You need the whole body for useless sack of potatoes. What do you need the body for? I'm gonna go do some activities now. Doing activities with my body.